We're back, baby. Quick hitters, fantasy affair football, www.ffaffair.com. Dude, we're bringing it to you tonight. I am the Maddie Daddy. We got Julio Jones on the mind just in time. And I'm not alone to do it. We go reach out to our buddy from Fantasy Pros, from Pro Football Network, Andrew Hall, baby. What's going on, buddy?
Not too much, man. How are you?
Doing great, my man. Thanks for coming on. This is kind of perfect timing with your release of your Julio Jones article today for Fantasy Pros. So it's just, too sweet, baby.
That's right.
Julio on the mind. Yeah,
right.
Baby. So let's cut down to business, man. Julio did not produce last year. So give us kind of what happened last year, kind of what went wrong.
It was injuries, honestly. Like when you get older, the injuries happen more. It's kind of a thing that everybody knows, and it's kind of obvious, but at the same time, it's unpredictable. Julio is one of those guys that won't miss games, which makes it worse in a way. Because when he's on the field, you have to play him. And so I think for a lot of people that had Julio last year, they were burned a couple of weeks because he was there but didn't do anything. He was a decoy, what have you. So I think a lot of people that have Julio in Dynasty right now are just panic selling or just confused and not sure what to do about it. So my article for Fantasy Pros was an article about Dynasty sell high targets. And obviously selling high is a weird phrase. A lot of people use it to mean sell at their highest value ever. That can be true, but you can have multiple peaks in a career. So my logic is anything that you have a peak upcoming, that's what you got to keep an eye out for. And I think as low as he's been, he's due for a peak. So that was kind of why he was in that article.
All right. So we've noticed in Dynasty, sometimes these veterans, now's not the best time to sell. But you dang near sure week one, somebody's going to want that alpha receiver, especially with all the trade chatter and just everything in this pass-heavy offense. Speaking of the Falcons offense, it was doo-doo last year. They made up for it because what happened? They went Pitts, baby. So you've got a whole new team. You've got a better tight end and I think a better running back in Mike Davis from old Todd, no knees Gurley. So looking at this, you have Mike Davis, you have Julio, you have Ridley, you have Gage, and Pitts. Are you worried with Pitts being in this offense, having a pass-catching RB like Davis, that they're going to take looks away from Julio in a negative way?
You know what? It's hard to say. I think this offense can go a lot of different directions. They're bringing in a new coach, right? They're changing their entire offensive scheme, bringing in Arthur Smith, who was with Tennessee last year, and they love to run the ball through Derrick Henry, do a lot of play action, things like that. I think there's a lot of question marks on this offense, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. They brought in a really big hitter in Kyle Pitts. I think that he's going to be somebody that definitely warrants some touches. He's going to maybe not start out of the gate hot, but he's going to get the ball at some point during the season. They're going to have to see what they got. So I do think that at some point it is going to be, why week 3, week 4, we should learn a lot. But at the end of the day, Julio is still Julio. As much as we don't want to like him in Dynasty, he starts out the season healthy. That's the number one concern. He's most likely not going to be injured going into week 1. I think he's still going to warrant top DB coverage, if not second, maybe because of Calvin Ridley stepping up. It doesn't matter. Julio can get open. He's a touchdown machine. When he gets hot, it's hard to get him off. So I don't know if I'm too worried about his production early in the season. It's just as the season goes along, it could become a problem.
Too hot to handle, too cold to hold.
We've
got another receiver there that's kind of always kind of creeped in that flex consideration. Anything to say on Russell Gage here?
I think he's someone that we've heard about for a few years. I think even it goes back, I think, to the end of 2019, I want to say, is when he started showing up, at least in my memory. And last year he was, like you said it perfectly, he was in a flex consideration. He's on every roster. You're not going to get him on waivers in most leagues. But I'm not too concerned about it from a talent standpoint, but it's more availability. And they always say the best ability is availability. If Julio's hurt, Gage is going to be the guy that steps into that role a little bit, or at least potentially see more targets. Ridley's going to get his. He's going to see 8 to 10 a game at least, and I'm not worried. Everybody loves Ridley. But I don't know if Julio's quite ready to pass that torch just yet. I just think there's still something left in that tank for him this year.
Little more meat on the bone left with Julio. Well,
yeah.
While we're talking Julio, let's talk trades, man, because we do play Dynasty. This is the off season. Everybody's having their rookie drafts right now. So a lot of people like to go different positions. I want to stick with receivers. It kind of gives you an idea of what to expect from that position. So let's go Julio. We got Brandon Cooks here. Wide receiver 2 every year. We're not going to have Watson more or less, at least half the year, we'd say. Let's just play it safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got Terrence Marshall, this shiny new toy in Carolina. No Samuel. Let's stick it from a competing team. Are you taking Julio? Or are you going to go ahead and take the chance on Brandon Cooks, who also has injury history, but he's produced? And Terrence Marshall, the wild card, the early second-round rookie pick.
Well, I mean, they all have question marks, right? We went through Julio's, but Brandon Cooks, who's throwing in the ball, we don't know. You mentioned the injuries. I mean, that offense is, somebody put it really well. They're the replacements, right? They're the bunch of guys that nobody wanted all coming together. You know, you got Mark Ingram, David Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, all these players that just never found a home. They're all together. You know, you got a bunch of receivers that random people they've signed for like 1-year deals. Who knows what it's going to be? And you got Terrace Marshall, who's a rookie, and obviously there's a lot of upside, a lot of hope, and everybody has the brightest possible lookout when it comes to rookies. Everybody's looking at the outlook as like he's the best receiver ever.
Right.
I mean, we all said the same thing about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside coming into a great opportunity, did nothing. N'Keal Harry, great opportunity, did nothing. Like it happens every year with what I would consider better receivers. So there's question marks all over the place in this trade. If it were me and I had Julio, I'd hold him right now. I would not trade him for that. If I had those two players, I'd probably hold them too and not trade them for Julio. So it's a weird trade for me because I just don't see the value in making this move because there's too many question marks. You're trading age for youth. You're trading age like 1 for 2, so you're adding a little depth. But I just don't see that quite the bonus on this trade in my mind. And I'm not, I'm not here to say it's a bad trade. I'm just saying in my mind, I'd probably hold both. They're both just about even. It's a good, even, fair trade, which sometimes means hold, right? Like let's not make a leap. We're not winning the trade. We're not losing it. Sometimes the best move you make is the one you don't make. So that's probably what I'd do here.
Absolutely. When you're dealing with veterans, you're dealing with the offseason. Don't sell too short on yourself. We will get closer to the season. Don't get bored. Make smart decisions.
Correct.
So smart decisions. Andrew, you've written articles about him. You've done the research. Julio, let's just say he's healthy going into this year. Give me a solid wide receiver ranking outlook for this next season.
Sure. So, I mean, if we're just talking this year, and I know Dynasty's a long-term game or, you want to play the long game, and he's 32, I think now. So there's not a lot of meat left on that bone age-wise. But I do think that once you get into the season, you're going to start to see him produce. He's actually going to output some fantasy points. And you're going to see contenders that want players like that. You're going to see people with players like Terrace Marshall who are having a rough time getting started, maybe start to scramble and say, you know what, never mind, I'll get rid of that and trade him for Julio straight up, right, without Brandon Cooks. So I think that there is, and I wouldn't take that trade if I had Julio, but you never know. Each league is different.
Right.
My logic is more of, I think Julio is going to come out of the gate strong. He's going to perform. Him and Matt Ryan have a connection that goes back years. That team, the Atlanta Falcons, if he stays on the Falcons, that team is built to win now. So I think that that's what they're going to do. If he gets traded to another team, man, all bets are off. Obviously, it depends on where he goes. If he lands somewhere like Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers is there, he could be a terrific compliment on a team like that. If he goes somewhere like Washington where they're having a couple struggles and a lot of question marks, but they got Ryan Fitzpatrick, that could be a terrific landing spot. So there's a bunch of places where he could end up. Seattle maybe with Russell Wilson, that'd be phenomenal. And it's just a bunch of. It really depends. If you go somewhere like Tennessee, maybe a little worrisome. I'm not sure what to do with that offense right now. It goes through Derrick Henry even without Arthur Smith. So I just think if he gets traded, it's really going to depend on that landing spot and how quickly he can acclimate. But he's a vet. He's going to demand targets. Let's put it that way. He's not going to just fall away.
I think a good way to kind of compare it to is it's not on the same level. He is an alpha. He's a robot. If you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's a 2 all day, but he puts up 1 weeks.
That's exactly right.
Julio, he could be a 1 every week if he's healthy. He's that good. Andy, before we get out of here, Jeff Bell, baby. Everybody loves him. What's up, Jeff? We love you.
Hey, Jeff.
Dude, where can they find more of your hot content?
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter at Andrew Hall FF. It's on the screen there, but I interact with a lot of people on there. And obviously, we're not all perfect. We all make mistakes. These are my opinions. These are my takes, right? They're not always going to be bold. They're not always going to be 100% accurate, but I'll give you the honest truth of what I believe. And like I said before, I think Julio is one of those guys. Like you mentioned the rankings, I didn't really get into that, but I think he's a solid wide receiver 2 this year for fantasy and redraft, which makes him obviously he's a starter then at that point. even in dynasty startups, he's still going in the late 5th, early 6th. That's a starter for your team. Don't look at his age and say, I'm not going to use him. He's still a starter. Don't forget that. So that's kind of where I see him, is in that prime wide receiver 2 range. And I think he's going to be great this year.
Dude, Andy, you killed it. Don't forget about Julio Jones. Don't forget about Andy Hall, baby. Pro Football Network, Fantasy Pros, taking over. Andy, as always, it has been a pleasure. My treasure.
You too, Matt.